I have recorded 411 executions in my life. I want you to understand that number before I tell you the rest. 411. I logged them. I stamped them. I filed the death of every kind of creature the 11 systems ever produced. Shell-born, water-breathers, the tall pale ones from the ring worlds who never blinked. I watched them all end, and I never once looked away, because looking away is a failure of duty, and duty was the only thing I had left after the war took everything else from me. 411. And then there was the human, and after him I could not count any more. Let me start at the beginning. Let me tell it the way it happened, slow, so you feel it the way I felt it. Because if I rush, you will not believe me, and I need you to believe me. My name is Oren Vass. I was a records keeper for the Coalition Tribunal, 3rd rank, assigned to the death station we called the weighing. That was our name for it, the weighing, because on that station a life was measured, judged, and ended, all in the same room under the same cold light. The station hung above a dead moon in a system nobody visited by choice. No stars close enough to warm it. Just the slow orbit, the hum of the recyclers and us. I was old even then. My kind, the Sethe, we live long and we wear our years on the outside. My skin had gone the color of dry riverbed. My hands shook when I held the stylus. But my memory was clean and my ears were good, and I never lied on a record, not once in 90 years of service. That was my whole reputation. Oren Vass does not lie. Whatever else they said about me, that I was cold, that I had no family, that I lived like a machine, they always added that. He does not lie. I mention this because everything I am about to tell you is the truth, and I know how it sounds. The human arrived on a prison transport in the middle of our night cycle. We ran a false day-night on the station to keep the crews sane, and it was deep in the dark hours when the docking alarm woke half of us. That alone was strange. Prisoners came on schedules. Nobody dumped a condemned creature on us at the black end of the night. I got up because I could not sleep anyway. My quarters were small and cold, and the light from the corridor came under my door like water. I pulled my robe on and went to see what the commotion was, expecting a shipping error, a wrong manifest, a bored guard needing a signature. Instead, I found the loading bay full of soldiers. Not station guards, real soldiers. Coalition Marines from the Varkesh Legion, the big-scaled ones, the ones bred for boarding actions, the ones you only ever saw in the news feed standing behind some general looking like they wanted to eat the cameras. 8 of them, on my station, around one small cage. And in the cage was the human. I had never seen one in the flesh. None of us had. Humans were a rumor from the far edge, a species that had appeared maybe 30 years before and immediately made everyone nervous. There were feeds, of course, grainy war footage, diplomatic disasters, but footage is footage. A thing on a screen is not a thing in a room. He was smaller than the Marines by a lot. He sat on the floor of the cage with his knees up and his arms resting on them loose, and he was watching everything with a calm that did not match his situation. His skin was a brown pink I had no word for. His head fur was dark and cut short. There was dried blood on his temple and a bruise going yellow-green around one eye, and he had the wrong number of fingers. Too many, or too few. I could never remember which was normal for them. And none of that is what I noticed first. What I noticed first was that he was looking at me. Out of everyone in that bay, all those soldiers and officers, he had found the old records keeper standing in the doorway in his sleep robe, and he was looking right at me, steady, like he had been waiting. I looked away. Duty. You do not fraternize with the condemned. But I felt it in my chest the whole rest of the night, that look. The commanding officer was a Varkesh captain named Dorego. I knew him a little from other transfers, a hard creature but not cruel, the kind who did his job and slept fine after. He came to my records office while his soldiers secured the prisoner, and he put a data slate down on my desk with a weight that told me he wanted it gone from his hands. Full public procedure, he said. By order of the Assembly. I looked at the slate, I looked at him. Public, I said. Broadcast all systems live. He said it flat, but his throat flaps moved the way they do when a Varkesh is uneasy. Every world, every feed. They want the whole galaxy watching. Now you have to understand what that meant. We did not broadcast executions. We had not in my lifetime. There was a reason. Long ago, before even my time, the coalition had learned that public killing made martyrs, made unrest, made the condemned into legends. So the weighing existed. Quiet, private, clean. A death nobody watched was a death nobody argued about. That was the whole philosophy of the place. And now the Assembly wanted this one loud. Why, I asked. Dorego looked at me for a long moment. Because they're afraid of them, he said. And a scared government wants everyone else scared too. If the galaxy watches a human die, really watches, sees him beg, sees him break, then humans stop being monsters in the dark. They become just meat like the rest of us. He tapped the slate. That's the theory. And you don't believe the theory. He didn't answer that. He was too disciplined to say it out loud. But he looked back once toward the corridor where they'd taken the prisoner, and I saw something move behind his eyes that I did not have a name for yet. Later I would learn the name for it. It was doubt. The captain of 8 war-bred Marines was afraid of one unarmed man in a cage, and he did not fully understand why, and that not understanding was eating at him. I filed the order, I stamped it, I did my job. I did not sleep the rest of that night. The trial, if you can call it that, took 2 days. I want to skip past it because it makes me ashamed, but I promised you the truth, so I will tell it. It was not a trial, it was a performance. The verdict had come stamped from the Assembly before the ship even docked. Guilty, everyone knew. The proceeding was theater to make the killing look lawful. The charges were read across 3 sessions. War crimes. The destruction of a coalition dreadnought, the Everbright, with its full complement, 4,000 souls lost when it broke apart in the void near a contested world. They said the human had done it. 1 man. They said he had sabotaged the ship's core from the inside. A captured prisoner who should have been helpless, who had instead brought down the largest warship in that sector, and every creature aboard it. I remember the numbers being read, and I remember looking at him in the dock and thinking, that is not possible, that small creature, 4,000. But he did not deny it. That was the thing that first cracked my certainty. Through the whole proceeding, through all the accusations and the outrage and the officials spitting their fury at him across the chamber, the human sat quiet, and when they finally asked him, "Do you deny these charges?" he looked up, and he spoke for the first time in a voice much lower and rougher than I expected, and he said, "No, I did it. And I'd do it again." The chamber went silent, not the silence of shock, the silence of a room full of creatures who had just realized the thing they were about to kill was not going to make it easy for them. I was the one recording. My stylus stopped moving. I remember Doraga. No, Doraga was the prosecutor. I keep confusing them. I remember the prosecutor's voice catching, because he had a whole speech prepared to break the prisoner's lies apart, and the prisoner had just handed him the truth and taken his speech away. They recessed early that day. Here is the part I have never told anyone. On the second night, I brought him food. I don't fully know why. It was not my duty. Feeding the condemned was for the guards, and the guards fed him fine, I'm sure, some paste or other. But I could not stop thinking about the numbers. 4,000. And I could not stop thinking about the way he had looked at me across that loading bay, like he knew me. And I am an old creature who lives alone on a death station, and no one had looked at me like they knew me in a very long time. So I took a bowl of the soft grain we ate, the one thing on the station that tasted like anything, and I went down to the holding level in the dark hours, and I told the night guard I needed to verify the prisoner's identity for the records, which was a lie, the only lie I have ever told in service. I put it here so you know I am not pretending to be better than I am." The guard let me in. The human was awake. Of course he was awake. He sat against the far wall of the cell with his knees up, the same position I'd seen him in on the first night, and when the door opened he did not startle. He just watched me come. "You're the old one from the docking bay," he said. His translator speech was rough but clear. "The one who couldn't sleep." I did not know what to say to that. I put the bowl down and pushed it through the slot in the barrier. He looked at it. Then he looked at me. And something in his face changed, softened, I think is the word, though human faces were still a foreign country to me and I was only guessing. "That's not regulation," he said quietly. "No. You'll get in trouble." "I am 1100 years past the age where trouble frightens me," I told him, which was an exaggeration. I am not that old. But it made a sound come out of him. A short, low sound, ha-ha, and I flinched because I did not know what it was. "Sorry," he said. "That's laughing, we do that. It means something's funny." He pulled the bowl toward him. He ate slowly, carefully, and I realized he was making it last, and I realized why, and I had to look at the wall. "Why did you bring this?" he asked. I told him the truth. "Because in 2 days I am going to record your death in front of the entire galaxy, and I wanted to know, before that, whether the thing I am recording is a monster or a person. My records are the only honest thing I have ever made. I did not want to file a lie about you without knowing which you were." He put the bowl down. He was quiet for a while. When he spoke again, his voice was different. "Ask me," he said. "Ask me about the ship, the Everbright. Ask me if it's true." "It's true," I said. "You already said so." "Ask me why." So I asked him why, and he told me. I am not going to tell you everything he told me that night. Some of it was his and it died with him, and it is not mine to broadcast even now. But I will tell you the shape of it, because you need it for what comes after. The Everbright had not been a warship the way the charges said. Or it had been, but that was not all it had been. Before it was destroyed, it had been carrying something. The human had been a prisoner aboard it, one of many. His whole unit. Captured after a battle at a world I had never heard of, a small human colony on the far edge, a place with a name I could not pronounce and did not try. And the Everbright had not been taking them to a prison. It had been taking them to a laboratory. The Coalition in those years was afraid of humans the way you are afraid of a fire you cannot put out. They spread too fast. They fought too well. They did not break the way other species broke. And so somewhere in the machinery of my government, someone had decided that the only way to stop being afraid was to understand, to take humans apart and find the peace inside that made them what they were, and learn to switch it off. The Everbright was carrying 200 human prisoners to that laboratory, to be taken apart. And the human in the cell in front of me had been one of them, and he had found a way, from inside a cell not so different from the one he sat in now, to reach the ship's core. I couldn't free them, he told me. His voice had gone very flat and very steady, the way a voice goes when the feeling behind it is too big to let out safely. 200 of us. I couldn't get them out. There was no way out. I checked. I spent 3 weeks checking. There was no way to save a single one of them. He looked at me. But I could make sure none of us got to that laboratory. I could make sure they didn't learn what they wanted to learn. I could make it cost them. He was quiet. 4,000 of their crew for 200 of us, and the research. And whatever that lab would have done to every human who came after. That was the trade. I took it. And I would take it again, old man, 100 times in the dark, alone, screaming. I would take it every single time. I sat down on the floor. My legs had stopped holding me. You could have told them, I said. At the trial, you could have said all of this, the lab, the 200, it would have. I stopped because I did not know if it was true. It might have changed things. He shook his head. That gesture I did know. No, it wouldn't. You know it wouldn't. They'd have buried it. They'd have called me a liar and killed me quiet. He almost smiled then, but not quite. Besides, if I tell it in that room, it's just words in a room that gets sealed forever. Nobody hears it. Nobody remembers. He tipped his head toward the ceiling, toward the station, toward the cameras I hadn't told him about. But you said it yourself, old man. In 2 days, the whole galaxy is going to be watching. And that was the first time I understood that he already knew what was coming, that he knew about the broadcast, that he had known, maybe, longer than I had. They think they're using me to teach the galaxy to be afraid of us, he said softly. They're giving me every camera in 11 systems, and they think I'm going to beg. I did not go back to my quarters that night. I sat outside his cell until the daylights came up, and neither of us said much more. And when the guard changed, I got up and went to file my records with my hands shaking worse than the age in them could explain. The morning of the execution, the station was more crowded than I had seen it in 40 years. Officials came in from the inner systems, assembly members in their heavy robes, generals with their aides, media handlers with their swarms of recording drones. The observation chamber above the execution floor filled up with important creatures who had never once dirtied themselves with the actual business of the weighing and now wanted front seats. They brought their own food. They laughed. I heard them laughing. On the morning we were going to kill a man, and I went to my station and I did not look at them because I was afraid of what my face would do. The execution floor itself was a wide circle of dark metal under a ring of the coldest light we had. In the center was the frame, that is what we called the device, the frame, where the condemned was secured for the procedure. The procedure was meant to be clean, a neural cascade, quick, painless, they said, though nobody who could report back had ever tested that claim. The cameras were everywhere. Doraga's Marines had turned the whole chamber into a broadcast studio overnight. Every angle, every drone, whatever the human did in his last minutes, the entire galaxy would see it in sharp, unforgiving detail. I took my place at the record station, elevated to one side where I had a full view of the floor. My job was simple: record the proceeding, log the time of death, certify the record. 90 years of practice. I could do it in my sleep. I did not think I could do it that day. They brought him in at the appointed time. He walked. I want you to understand that, because it mattered more than anything. He walked in on his own between 2 Marines, and they were not dragging him, and they were not holding him up. He walked like a creature going somewhere he had decided to go. His hands were bound in front of him. He wore the plain gray of the condemned. And he walked across that dark floor under those cold lights with his back straight and his head level, and his eyes moving across the chamber, taking it in, all of it, the officials, the cameras, the Marines, and he did not look afraid. The chamber had been loud with the murmur of the important guests. As he crossed the floor, it went quiet, not all at once. In a slow spread, the way frost creeps across a window, quiet, moving out from the center where he walked until the whole chamber held its breath. They secured him in the frame. He let them. He did not resist and he did not help. He simply allowed it, the way you allow rain. The Marine tightening the restraints, a young one, I could see, by the loose fit of his plating, the Marine's hands were not steady. I watched him fumble the second binding twice. And I watched the human turn his head, just slightly, and say something to that young Marine low, that the cameras caught but the translators did not carry to the broadcast. Later I pulled the audio from my own record. I know what he said. He said, "It's all right, son. You're just doing your job, I don't blame you." The young Marine stepped back too fast and stood at attention with his eyes fixed on nothing. The senior official rose to read the sentence. I will not name him. He is dead now of old age in comfort, which is its own kind of injustice, but he is dead and naming him serves nothing. He read the charges in the formal cant. He read the verdict. He read the sentence. His voice rolled out across 11 systems, grand and cold and certain, the voice of a government that has decided to teach a lesson. And through all of it, the human stood in the frame and listened, calm, patient, the way you listen to someone you have already forgiven for a thing they haven't finished doing yet. The official reached the end. He asked the ritual question, the one we always ask, the one that in 90 years I had heard answered with weeping, with cursing, with silence, with prayers to 100 different gods. Condemned, do you have final words? The chamber leaned in, every camera, every drone, 11 systems watching. This was the moment. This was what the assembly had built the whole broadcast for. This was where the monster would break, where the galaxy would see a human beg for his life, where humans would stop being terrors in the dark and become, at last, just meat like the rest of us. The human lifted his head. And he smiled. I have thought about that smile every day since, every single day. It was not a mad smile. I need you to understand that, because that is what the officials tried to say afterward, that he had lost his mind, that it was the grin of a broken creature. It was not. I was closer than any of them. I saw it clearly. My record caught it in perfect detail, and I have watched it 10,000 times. It was a gentle smile. It was almost kind. It was the smile of someone who knows something the rest of the room does not know, and feels a little sorry for them, and is about to tell them. He looked past the official. He looked up, directly into the nearest broadcast drone, directly into the eyes of 11 systems, and he spoke, and his rough, low voice went out to every world at once. My name is Sergeant Kellen Reyes, he said. 3rd Colonial Rifles. Some of you are hearing a human voice for the first time right now, and it's going to be the last thing they wanted you to hear, so let me make it count. The official started to gesture for the procedure to begin. Doraga, standing at the edge of the floor, did not relay the gesture. I saw it. The captain looked at the official's raised hand, and he did not move. And in that one held moment I understood that even here, even now, the humans had already won something, because a Varkesh war captain had just chosen, on live broadcast, to let a condemned man finish speaking. They told you I destroyed a warship, Reyes said. That's true. They told you 4,000 of their people died. That's true too, and I'm not going to stand here and pretend I feel nothing about that, because I do. I feel it every night. 4,000 is 4,000, and most of them were just doing a job, same as that boy who tied my hands. He tipped his head at the young Marine who had gone rigid as stone. But they didn't tell you what that ship was carrying, so I will. And he told them. He told the galaxy about the 200 prisoners. He told them about the laboratory. He told them, in plain, rough words, what his government, my government, had planned to do to 200 living creatures in the name of no longer being afraid. He named the world. He named the battle. He gave dates and coordinates and the designation of the research facility, spoken clear and slow, so that anyone with the will to look could go and find the truth of it. The chamber had stopped breathing entirely. I looked at the officials in their high seats, and I watched their certainty come apart. I watched them realize all at once that they had made a terrible mistake. They had wanted the galaxy to watch a human die. They had given a human the largest audience any single creature had ever had in the history of the Coalition. And instead of begging, he was standing there in the frame with the neural cascade a heartbeat away, and he was telling 11 systems the truth. Someone shouted to cut the feed. I heard it. Cut the feed, cut the feed. But cutting the feed on a live galaxy-wide broadcast is not a switch you flip. It goes through 100 relays, and by the time the order reached the relays it was far, far too late, and I think even the ones shouting knew it, and shouted anyway, the way you slap at a fire that has already reached the ceiling. I'm going to die today, Reyes said, and his voice was steady and it was almost gentle. That's fine. I made my peace with dying a long time ago on a ship full of my brothers who never got a trial or a broadcast or a chance to say a single word. I'm the lucky one. You gave me a microphone. He almost laughed. You really shouldn't have. He looked then, and I will swear to this until I am ash. He looked up and to the side, toward the record station, toward me, and he found me the same way he had found me in the loading bay in the dark, and he gave me the smallest nod. "There's an old records keeper on this station," he said to 11 Systems. "Brought me a bowl of food last night, broke his own rules to do it, never told me his name," which was true, I never had. "Point is," his voice caught just slightly the only time it did, "point is, even here, even on the station where they kill you, there was one person who wanted to know if I was a monster before he wrote it down. So I don't think you're monsters either. Any of you. I think you were just scared and someone used your fear. Don't let them. That's it. That's my last words. Don't let them use your fear." He straightened in the frame. "Go ahead," he said quietly. "I'm ready. I've been ready for a long time." There is a silence I will never forget. The silence after he stopped speaking. It went on and on. The official with the raised hand did not lower it. Doraga did not give the order. The whole chamber, all those important creatures, all those cameras, hung in the space after a condemned man had told them the truth, and then, gently, given them permission to kill him anyway. I remember thinking, someone has to move, someone has to do something, this cannot just hang here. And then from the observation deck, one of the assembly members stood up. An old one from the Waterworld Systems, her long neck folded down in the posture my kind reads as grief. She stood, and in the silence on the live feed, she said one word. "No." The official's hand wavered. "No," she said again louder. "I will not certify this. I did not know. None of us were told what that ship carried. I will not put my name on this death until we know if what he says is true. Stop. Stop the procedure. Stop it now." And then it was not just her. It came apart fast after that, the way a dam does, not slowly, all cracks and then all at once. Another assembly member rose, then two more. Voices climbing over each other. "Stop it. We have to know, is it true? Someone verify the coordinates. Someone find that facility. You cannot kill him until we know." The chamber that had been so silent became a storm, and in the middle of it the human stood in the frame, bound, ready to die, and watched the galaxy argue about whether to let him. I did the only thing I knew how to do. I recorded it, all of it. Every word, every voice, every second, clean and honest, the way I had recorded 411 deaths before it. Except this was not a death, not that day. The procedure was suspended. It took 3 hours of shouting and threats and one near riot in the observation deck, but by the end of it the order came down. The execution was stayed pending investigation into the claims made on the broadcast. Sergeant Kellen Reyes, 3rd Colonial Rifles, was returned to his cell alive. I logged the stay of execution at the 7th hour of the day cycle. My hands did not shake when I wrote it. I don't know why. For the first time in a very long time, they were perfectly still. That night, I went down to the holding level again. I did not lie to the guard this time. I did not need to. Half the station had stopped following its own rules by then. Everything had come loose. I told him I was going to see the prisoner, and he just looked at me and stepped aside. Reyes was sitting against the far wall. Same position, knees up. But when the door opened and he saw it was me, his whole face changed, and he pushed himself up onto his feet, and he came to the barrier, and for a moment neither of us said anything. "You're still here," he said finally. "So are you," I said. The ha-ha sound came out of him again. The laughing. But it broke in the middle and turned into something else, something I did not have a name for either, a shaking in his shoulders and a wetness on his face that he wiped away fast with his bound hands. "I didn't think it would work," he said. His voice had gone rough and small. "I really didn't. I thought I'd say my piece and they'd kill me anyway, and maybe, one person out there would remember it. I never thought," he stopped. He looked at me. "That old woman on the deck, the one who stood up, do you know her name?" "I did," I told him. He said it back to himself, quiet, like he was learning a prayer. Then he looked at me again. "And yours," he said. You never told me your name, you said it on the broadcast, remember? Never told me his name. Whole galaxy heard me say I didn't know the name of the one person on this station who, he stopped. He swallowed. So, tell me, what's your name, old man? I told him. Orin Vass, he repeated, careful with it, getting it right. He reached his bound hands through the slot in the barrier, palms open, a human gesture I did not understand yet but would come to understand very well in the days ahead. Thank you, Orin Vass, for the bowl of food. For wanting to know, you have no idea what you did. I put my old shaking hand against his open ones through the barrier. I recorded it, I told him. All of it. Every word you said. It is filed and it is certified and it is honest, and there is not a government in 11 systems that can make it say anything other than exactly what happened. Whatever comes next, whatever they decide, the record stands. You told the truth to the whole galaxy, and I made sure it can never be unsaid. He looked at me for a long moment. That's the bravest thing I've heard all day, he said. And I told a room full of executioners to go ahead and kill me. I said at the start that after the human I could not count anymore. Here is what I meant. In the days that followed, they sent investigators to the coordinates Reyes had given. And they found it. The facility. The laboratory. Emptied and scrubbed by then, warned somehow, but not scrubbed clean enough, never clean enough. And what they found in the ruins of it was enough to turn a stay of execution into a full inquiry. And the inquiry into something much larger. Something that reached up and up into the machinery of my government and pulled loose things that had been hidden for 30 years. I recorded a great deal of it. My honest records, it turned out, were worth something in a season when very few honest records survived. I was called to testify. Old Orin Vass, who does not lie. They put my 411 death logs and my one stay of execution up on the great screens, and they asked me to certify them. And I did, and my hands were still. But that is a long story, and it belongs to part 2, and I am an old creature and my strength for telling comes in pieces now. I will end this part where the smile ended, with the galaxy watching and the frame holding a bound man, and 11 systems learning all at once that the thing they had been taught to fear was not a monster at all, that it was a person. That it had brought them a bowl of the truth through the slot in the barrier and asked them, gently, to please stop being afraid. He smiled, and the galaxy that came to watch a human die stayed to watch a human live. And nothing in 11 systems was ever the same again. The morning after the smile, the weighing woke up a different place. I have lived a long time, and I have learned that a station has a mood the way a creature has a mood. You feel it in the air before anyone speaks. For 90 years the weighing had one mood only, a low gray quiet, the mood of a place where things end. That morning it was gone. In its place was something I had not felt on that station in all my service. It was the feeling of a place where something had begun. The important guests wanted to leave. That was the first thing. All those officials and generals and assembly members who had come to watch a human die, they wanted off the station now, fast, before the thing they had been part of got any bigger. But the docking bay was jammed. Every ship wanted to launch at once. And Captain Dorego, who 3 days before had been an ordinary war captain doing an ordinary job, stood at the bay controls and did a thing that I still do not fully understand him having the courage to do. He locked the docks. No departures, he said, flat, the way he said everything. Assembly order suspended the execution pending investigation. That's a live proceeding now. Nobody who witnessed it leaves until investigations clears the manifest. He looked out over the crowd of furious important creatures. Take your seats, or take your cells, your choice. An old general, heavy-scaled, 3 war decorations on his chest, got right up in Dorego's face. I was close enough to hear it. You are a captain, the general said very low. I can end you with a word. Yes, sir, Dorego said. You probably can, but it'll be on the record that you tried to leave a crime scene and there's 11 systems watching the record now. He did not blink. Sir. The general left. Not the station, he couldn't, but he left the bay, and he did not come back, and I understood that something had shifted in the machinery of power that could not shift back. The whole coalition ran on the certainty that the small do not question the large. Reyes had broken that certainty on live broadcast, and now a captain was breaking it in a docking bay, and I could feel it spreading like a crack through ice. They came for me on the second day. 2 investigators from the inner systems. Not soldiers, investigators. A branch I had heard of but never dealt with, creatures whose whole purpose was to find out what was true and write it down. My people, in a way, though I did not say so. They came to my records office and they were very polite and very tired, and one of them, a young one, pale, ring-world stock, the kind that never blinks, put a data slate on my desk and said, "Records Keeper Oren Vass, we need everything you logged from the moment the prisoner arrived. The whole file, uncut." I gave it to them. I want to tell you I hesitated, that I weighed it, worried over it, thought about what it would cost me. I did not. There was nothing to weigh. They asked for my honest record, and my honest record was the only thing I had ever made, and I handed it across without a tremor. 90 years of does not lie, and it turned out the whole 90 years had been practice for that one moment. The pale investigator scrolled through it. I watched his eyes move. He reached the log from the second night, the one where I had written, in the plain cant of the records, that I had entered the prisoner's holding level outside of duty to verify identity, which was a lie, and then in the next line that I had provided the prisoner with food, which was the truth. He stopped, he read it twice, he looked up at me. "You logged your own violation," he said. "I logged what happened," I said. "That is the whole job." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he did something I did not expect. He inclined his head, the ring-world gesture of respect which they do not give lightly and almost never to an outsider, and he said quietly, "The record is clean. Thank you, Keeper. Do you know how rare that is? We have pulled 40 personnel files off this station in 2 days. Yours is the only one that doesn't contradict itself." He almost smiled. "You'd be surprised what people do to their own logs when they're afraid." I was not surprised. I had spent 90 years watching people be afraid, but I did not say that either. Reyes was still in his cell through all of this. Alive but not free, the stay of execution was not a pardon. It was a pause, a held breath, and every creature on that station knew it could go either way. If the investigation found nothing, or found something and buried it, the frame was still down on the execution floor, and the neural cascade was still one order away. He knew it better than anyone. I went to see him each night. It was no longer a secret and no longer a violation. Half the station came through that holding level now, guards and crew, some just to look at him, the human who had changed everything, the way you look at a thing you have only heard stories about. He was patient with all of them. But when I came, he would push up off the wall and come to the barrier, and there was an ease between us by then that I did not have with any living creature, and had not had with any living creature in longer than I could remember. "They found it," he told me one night. His voice was strange. "The facility, word came down. The investigators told me themselves, protocol, they said, the accused has a right to know the status. They found it, Oren Vass." "I know," I said. "I filed the notification this morning." "Of course you did." The ha-ha, then quiet. "It was real, all of it. I knew it was real, I was there, but there's a part of you that starts to wonder after enough time in a cell whether you made it up, whether you did the worst thing you'll ever do for a reason that was only in your head." He pressed his forehead against the barrier. "It was real. There was a lab. It was going to happen. I wasn't crazy." "You were not crazy," I said. He was quiet for a while. Then, "That doesn't bring the 4,000 back." "No," I said. "It does not." I did not offer him comfort on that point, because there was no honest comfort to offer, and he would have known it was a lie, and a lie was the one thing I could not give him. We sat with it instead. The 4,000 of theirs and the 200 of his, and the terrible arithmetic that a captured man had done alone in the dark, and the fact that being right did not make it weigh less. Sometimes the only kindness is to not pretend the weight is lighter than it is. That was the thing I learned from him in those nights. Humans do not want you to make the weight lighter. They want you to help them carry it. The inquiry began at the inner systems, but it could not stay there. You have to understand the size of what came loose. The facility Reyes named was not one facility. It was the visible end of a program, a thing that reached back 30 years, to the first fear of the first human, and forward through a dozen worlds and 100 officials, and a budget hidden inside other budgets. Once the investigators had the thread, they pulled, and it did not stop coming. Names came loose. The general who had threatened Dorrego in the docking bay, his name came loose. The senior official who had read the sentence, his name came loose, though he was dead of old age by the time they found it, comfortable to the end, which I have already told you and which still, when I think of it, makes the acid rise in my throat. And the assembly member from the water worlds, the old one who had stood and said no, she was named too, but named differently. She became the center of the thing. She had said no on live broadcast, in front of 11 systems, and that no became a place people could gather around. Others who had been afraid to speak found that they could stand next to her no and add their own. The inquiry that the frightened government had wanted small and quiet became the largest public reckoning in the history of the coalition, and it happened because one human smiled and one old woman refused, and one records keeper did not lie. I have thought a great deal about whether any of it would have happened if even one of those three things had been missing. I do not think it would have. That is the part that keeps me awake. How thin the thread was, how easily it might never have held. They called me to testify at the 9th session. I had never left the weighing in 90 years. Not once. My whole world was that station above the dead moon, the gray quiet, the 411. And now they put me on a fast transport and took me inward, past stars I had only ever logged the light of, to the great chamber at the heart of the inner systems where the inquiry sat. It was enormous. I am not ashamed to tell you it frightened me. Tiers of seats rising up and up, filled with every kind of creature the 11 systems held, and screens larger than my whole station, and at the center, a single stand where the witness stood alone. They called my name and I walked out onto that floor, old, shaking in the plain robe of a records keeper, an insignificant creature from a death station nobody visited by choice, and I felt every eye in 11 systems. And then I saw him. They had brought Reyes to the inquiry, still bound, still a prisoner, still under the stay and not the pardon, but there, in a secured stand across the chamber, present, because the accused had the right to face the proceeding. Our eyes found each other across that vast space the way they had found each other in the loading bay in the dark, the way they had found each other over the frame, and he gave me the smallest nod, and the fear went out of me all at once and did not come back. They put my records on the great screens, all of it. The arrival, the trial, the food I logged, the smile, the stay. And they asked me, the presiding officer, a grave creature I did not know, to certify the record, to swear before 11 systems that what was on those screens was true and complete and unaltered. I said the words, my hands were still. Then the questions came, and they were not gentle, because some in that chamber still wanted the whole thing to be a lie, still wanted the human to be a monster, and the records keeper to be a fool or a traitor, and they came at me hard. An official, inner system, sleek, precise, rose and said, Keeper, you brought the condemned food, against regulation. You formed an attachment to him. Is it not possible that your records are colored by that attachment? That an old creature, alone, lonely, was manipulated by a clever prisoner into becoming his instrument. And I want to tell you what I said, because it is the truest thing I have ever said out loud. I have recorded 411 executions, I told the chamber. I have watched 411 creatures die, of every kind you have and some you have forgotten. And in 90 years, not one of them ever asked me whether I thought they were a monster before they died. Not one. They begged, or they cursed, or they wept, or they prayed, but not one of them ever once wondered at the end whether they had been good. This one did. He did not ask me for his life. He knew I could not give it. He asked me whether I would write the truth about him after he was gone. That is not manipulation. A creature who wants to manipulate you asks you for something. He asked me for nothing but honesty, and honesty is the one thing I have never had to be manipulated into giving. So yes, I brought him food, and I would do it again. And my record is true, and I will certify it 100 times, and there is no attachment in 11 systems that could make me write down a thing that did not happen. Ask the investigators. They pulled 40 files off my station. Mine was the only one that did not contradict itself. That was true before I ever met the human. It is true now. The chamber was silent. The official sat down. And across that vast floor in his secured stand, Sergeant Kellen Reyes lowered his head, and I saw his bound shoulders shake. And I knew that sound even from that distance, even though I could not hear it, the shaking that was laughing and the thing that was not laughing, both at once, the human way of holding too much feeling in a body too small for it. The verdict on the program came first. The inquiry found that the laboratory had been real, the program had been real, the Everbright had been carrying 200 human prisoners to be taken apart, and that this had been done in secret, without the knowledge or consent of the full assembly, by a faction within the government that had decided fear gave them the right. The program was dissolved. Its architects were named. Those still living were removed from their offices. Some tried, some, the powerful ones, always the powerful ones, merely retired to comfort, which is its own injustice and which I have stopped expecting the universe to correct. But the finding was made, on the record, in front of 11 systems, and a finding on the record, certified and honest, is a thing that cannot be unsaid. I know this better than anyone alive. I have spent my whole life making things that cannot be unsaid. And then, finally, they turn to the matter of the human. This is the part I find hardest to tell. Because you want it to be simple. You want them to have set him free. After everything, the smile, the truth, the inquiry, the 200, the 4,000, the old woman's no. You want the story to end with the man walking out into the light, pardoned, vindicated, whole. It did not end that way. I promised you the truth at the start, and I will not stop now at the end when it is hardest. Reyes had destroyed a coalition warship. 4,000 creatures had died. That was true, and the inquiry finding that his reasons were real and terrible and understandable did not make it untrue. The chamber wrestled with it for 4 sessions. Some argued that context is everything, that a man who acts to stop an atrocity cannot be judged as a common murderer. Others argued that 4,000 is 4,000 no matter the reason, and that a government which lets even a justified killing of that scale go unanswered is a government that has stopped meaning anything. I sat in that chamber for all 4 sessions and I recorded every word, and I could not tell you which side was right, because I do not think either side was wholly right, because it was the kind of question that does not have a clean answer, the kind of weight that does not get lighter no matter how many creatures try to lift it. In the end, they did not free him, and they did not execute him. The sentence was commuted to permanent exile, not to a prison, to a world, a real world habitable on the far edge, one of the human colonies that had survived. He would be returned to his own people, and he would never again set foot in coalition space, and if he did, the original sentence would stand. It was not freedom. It was not justice, not the clean kind, but it was life. It was his own sky over his own head and his own people around him, and after the frame and the cold light and the neural cascade one order away, it was more than any of us had thought he would get on the morning he smiled. The old woman from the water worlds cast the deciding vote for the commutation. She was the last to vote, and the chamber was tied, and when they called her name she stood slow, her long neck folded down, and she said, "I said no once, to a killing I did not understand. I have spent every day since learning what I was saying no to. I will not say yes to another killing now that I understand everything. Let him go home. Let there be one human in the galaxy who remembers that we were capable of mercy. We will need him to remember it. I think, someday, we will need him very badly to remember it." And that was that. I saw him one more time before they took him to the transport. They let me. By then I was not just the records keeper of a death station. I was, in some strange way I never asked for and never wanted, a small part of the story the whole galaxy had watched, and small parts of stories are given courtesies that ordinary records keepers are not. They let me into the secured hold where he waited for his transport home. His hands were unbound. That was the first thing I noticed. After all those nights of the slot in the barrier and the bound wrists, his hands were free, and he held one out to me, palm open. That human gesture I understood completely now. I put my old shaking hand in his. "Come with me," he said. It came out fast like he'd been holding it. "There's room on the transport. The colonies would, Orin Vass, they'd build you a statue. The old keeper who wrote the truth you'd never want for anything. You'd have a whole world of people who know what you did." His hand tightened on mine. "You don't have to go back to that station. You don't have to record any more deaths. Come home with me. Let me give you a life that isn't gray." I have thought about that offer every day since, the way I have thought about the smile. I think about the world I did not see, the sky I did not stand under, the statue I will never have. And I said no. "I have 411 records," I told him. 411 creatures who died on my station, quiet, unwatched, with no inquiry and no broadcast and no old woman standing up to say their names. Nobody is ever going to build them a statue. Nobody is ever going to make a story out of them. The only thing they have, the only thing in all of 11 systems that says they existed and mattered and were more than meat, is my record. And if I leave, who keeps it? Who certifies it? Who makes sure it is never unsaid? I closed my other hand over his. "You taught me something," I said, "that night with the bowl. You asked me to write the truth about you because a record is the only thing that outlives the fear. You were right, but you were only half right, because it is not just the truth about the ones the galaxy watches that has to be kept. It is the truth about the 411 that nobody watched. Those are mine. I cannot leave them. Somebody has to be the one who does not lie, even about the deaths that no one will ever hear of." I held his hand. "Go home, Sergeant Reyes. Live under your own sky. Remember mercy, like the old woman said. And someday when you tell this story to your people, you tell them there was an old records keeper who stayed. That's the statue I want. Not stone. Just that they know I stayed." He did not argue. He was a soldier. He understood a creature standing his post. But his face did the thing human faces do. The wetness he did not wipe away this time, and he pulled me into a thing his people call an embrace, which my people do not do and which I did not know how to answer. So I simply let him, old and stiff and shaking, and it was the first time in longer than I can count that another living creature had held me, and I have not forgotten it, and I will not. "Thank you, Orin Vass," he said against my shoulder, "for the bowl of food, for wanting to know, for staying." Then they took him to the transport, and the transport went out to the far edge, and I never saw him again. I am very old now. Older than I have any right to be. I am still the records keeper of the weighing, though the weighing is not what it was. We do not execute any more. The inquiry ended that, one of the many things that came loose and did not go back. The station is a memorial now. Creatures come from all 11 systems to see the execution floor where the humans smiled, and the frame still stands there, empty, kept exactly as it was, and a small quiet crowd stands around it every day and looks at the place where everything changed. They come to my office too sometimes. They ask me to tell it, the old keeper who was there, and I tell them the way I have told you, slow, so they believe it. Sometimes they ask if the story is really true, all of it. The smile, the truth, the 200, the stay, the old woman's no, the exile, the offer I refused. They look at me, an old shaking creature the color of dry riverbed, and they wonder if I have embellished it, the way old creatures embellish the one great thing that ever happened to them. And I tell them what I told the chamber, and what I have told you. I have recorded 411 deaths, and I have never once lied on a record. The galaxy came to the weighing to watch a human die. It wanted to learn to stop being afraid by watching fear win. Instead, it watched a bound man look into every camera in 11 systems and gently forgive it and tell it the truth and ask it, only ask it, to please stop letting anyone use its fear. He smiled, and the whole galaxy, which had come to watch a man die, learned instead how to live. That is the record. It is true, and it is complete, and it is certified, and there is no government and no fear and no passing of years in all of 11 systems that can ever make it say anything other than exactly what happened. I made sure of it. I stayed,